Welcome. You are listening to the Be a Better Being podcast hosted by Michelle Zellner and Sasha Berscheid. Michelle and Sasha are here to give you information and inspiration to help you live your healthiest, happiest lives. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy the show.
Greetings. Thank you for tuning into the Be a Better Being podcast. I'm Michelle Zellner, your host. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see my beautiful side host, Sasha, is with me today. And if you're not watching on YouTube, then you're missing out on all of her glow and her dances and her you-rah-rah movements, which, I mean, I love you, darling. And this is one of my favorite ways that we do this podcast is when it's me and you. How is it going today?
I agree. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad that Michelle, you're here in the flesh. Speaking about your flesh.
Yes. What a great segue into the topic of our conversation today. So, if anybody follows me on social media or you're connected to me in any way other than this podcast, you already know that back in March, I was diagnosed with melanoma and determined that surgery was necessary. Had surgery at the end of April to remove the affected tissue as well as some lymph nodes because melanoma, I'll get into the details, but melanoma is something that can become systemic and can cause a lot of problems. And so we test some lymph nodes to see if it has become systemic. And I'll leave the dangler right there because we're going to talk about the whole process. But May is Skin Cancer Awareness Month. I know this is June. However, we're headed into the thick of peak sun. And so I think it's never a wrong time to have this conversation. So that's what we're going to do today.
Yeah, this will be good for me. I love being in the sun. I will be the first to admit that this year has been the first year that oh, I've ever, I've ever used sunscreen. I'm 35 years old. I've never used sunscreen. I just felt like my skin handles the sun so well that I don't need sunscreen. I mean, look at that right there, right? If for those of you that aren't looking at whatever, I just took off my watch. I've never used sunscreen, but now when you message me and I'm like, what is going, like how, what, when, where, how, when, why? Yeah. So I need this conversation probably more so than the listeners because I need it jammed in my head. What to do, what not to do, what to look for, and what to be educated on.
Yeah, well, let me just go back to when I was 35. I think probably, well, I know for sure I was using sunscreen by then, but I certainly wasn't super devoted and dedicated to it. I grew up in the era where we literally slathered ourselves in baby oil and baked in the sun. It was all about who could come back from summer break the darkest. If you went on a warm weather vacation, boy, you better have a nice dark tan. And so, that was the mentality. I also handle the sun very well. I don't burn. I mean, I will burn if I'm out there unprotected for too long, but I turn that nice golden brown. I look back at my pictures of when I lived in Hawaii and I literally was blacker than my black boyfriend. And so clearly the dedication to sunblock was not there. And, I always thought it'll be fine, right? We didn't really talk about skin cancer at all, actually. It was like, oh yeah, put sunblock on so you don't burn. Like that was really the whole gist of it. I really didn't get introduced to skin cancer until I moved to Colorado. I had a personal training client whose mom had passed away from melanoma in her early 50s. And I was like, oh, wow, that's really sad. I'm 26. Like, oh, gosh, that's sad. Literally didn't mean anything to me. And then a few years later, one of my clients, fair haired, fair skin, grew up in California. So now he's in his 50s and he comes to a session one time with like a big chunk of his nose taken out. Like, what is this? Well, it was some basal cell squamous cell carcinoma. That's what you do. You scoop out the tissue. And those are the like kind of the first introduction to skin cancer that I had. And then I started getting a little more dedicated to sunblock. I think even a lot of it for me though wasn't so much about skin cancer, but it was wrinkles and sun damage and thinking, but there's like plastic surgery or medical topical things that will take care of the wrinkles, right? skin cancer still didn't really ever cross my mind. Years ago, my mom had some things removed. Again, it was the basal cell, kind of scoop out your tissue. Not great. And my mom was a sun worshiper. Believe me, I worship the sun. I love it. I spend as much time outside as I can. It's one of the reasons I live in Colorado. And so, it's just been one of those things that, yeah, I'm aware of it, but right. And then I really got more interested in understanding it. I would say probably about 10 years ago, as I did a lot of corporate wellness trainings, I would get a lot of requests for breast cancer awareness in October for corporate wellness sessions on breast cancer awareness. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. I've never gotten one request ever for skin cancer awareness. And yet, skin cancer is the number one form of cancer, number one by far. So I started really digging a little deeper and trying to figure out, well, why does nobody care about skin cancer? Why does nobody talk about skin cancer? And I'm saying nobody, obviously, very generally. Obviously, there are people who are talking about it. It is not a wide conversation like breast cancer and colon cancer and prostate cancer are. So when I started researching it, kind of looking into it, I think that's really when I became a lot more devoted to sunblock, hoping that all the damage that I'd already caused was like not going to really be a big deal. And I'm going to prevent as much as I can further damage going forward. Fast forward 10 years, we'll talk about how unfortunately my hopes were dashed. But yeah, I'm going to pause there to see if you have any questions.
I mean, I have questions, but it I think comes with the start of the journey, like how do you even know where do you start? What are suggestions? Like I need to know what to look for. What signs did you see? Were you sick? Did you get a temperature? Did your skin actually hurt type of thing,
Yeah. No, that's what's kind of tricky about all cancers. You don't feel cancer. You just don't. Let me just give a very, very surface level overview of cancer. Okay, so your cells have DNA. DNA is like the instruction manual for how your cells are supposed to behave, how they grow, multiply, divide, and when they die. We damage our DNA in a variety of ways, right? We get inherited damaged DNA. That could be like your genetic predisposition, like the BRCA genes for breast cancer, right? That is, you've inherited wonky instructions, basically. Or the DNA can become damaged due to repeated exposure to whatever. In the case of skin cancer, it's the repeated exposure to ultraviolet rays. And basically, damaged DNA means the instructions are a little wonky. Very often, your immune system will override wonky instructions and still force a cell to die when it's supposed to die. But for some reasons, in some cases, that doesn't happen. And now these instructions are going to change how the cells behave. So when it comes to detecting skin cancer, it's the A, B, C, D, E's. Okay. No, so you got to know your alphabet here. So, number one, you have to look at yourself. You have to look at spots on your body. You can't see everything. So, you also need to go to your annual dermatologist and make sure they are scanning you head to toe because some things we're going to look for asymmetry. Okay. Things should be symmetrical. If they are asymmetrical, then that means there's a red flag. It doesn't necessarily mean it's skin cancer, but it's something to be aware of. The borders, that's the B, the borders should be very smooth. If they're jagged, again, something to just be aware of and maybe get checked out. C is the color. We have lots of colors of things on our bodies. Atypical colors are really, really, really dark, brown or black, purple, maybe red with a white spot on it. So, kind of atypical things that you don't normally see. And then D is diameter. Anything that is larger than a quarter inch in diameter, which is basically the size of a pencil head eraser, that should be checked automatically. Not any of those things by themselves means it's skin cancer. I think personally, the biggest letter you should be involved with is E, and that is evolution. Has something changed? It was this size and now it's this size. It was symmetrical and now it's not. It was this color and now it's this color. So, for me, I've always had this mole at the top of my back, kind of right by the upper part of my tattoo. And I can see it when I look in the mirror. And last November 2022,
So you were born with the mole.
yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
Okay.
And you don't have to be born with these things too. Moles will just appear, right? I mean, our bodies are interesting, our skin is interesting. So just because a mole has appeared also doesn't mean it's anything. But again, because it's new, we should always get new things checked out. So, and I can't say that I was born with that, probably not, but I'd had that mole for a very long time. And I've been going to my dermatology appointments for a decent amount of time, and it was never a concern. In fact, a few years ago, I had a whole bunch of moles removed. One was right at the back of my neck, like right where your necklace catches. And I clearly remember, I know I've had that one for a long time because my coach Dale, he always like, you can see it when my ponytail is up. So it'd be like my go button. He would like push the button to make me go. So I know I've had that one for a long time. Got to remove because it's in like an annoying spot. And then a couple others, like where my waistband of my jeans hits, there's like a mole there. So I went and had a whole bunch of moles removed probably just a couple years ago. And they always biopsy. Anytime they remove something, they'll biopsy. Nothing's ever come back, anything. So I noticed this mole that has changed. In November, I'm like, that looks a little different. It's darker, it's bigger. Kind of, I mean, yeah, that's different. So evolution, it's changed. So I know I need to go get it checked out. And, it's the holidays, it's busy, I'm traveling, I'm in Hawaii, certainly being way more diligent about keeping out of the sun because of that. In my head, I'm liking, it's probably basal cell, squamous cell. We'll take it care of. It'll figure itself out. Well, I finally get to the dermatologist in March, and even the dermatologist didn't really seem that concerned. She was like, "Yeah, it looks a little grumpy. We'll biopsy it. I'm sure it's not a big deal." And then a couple days later, I got the call that, well, it is a big deal. It's melanoma. So let me go through the types of skin cancer. Okay. And here's why I think maybe skin cancer doesn't get that much attention, because the two most common forms are not deadly. And it is almost impossible for them to become deadly. So basal cell and squamous cell, those are just different layers of your skin cells. So we have upper layers and we have lower layers, basal cell, squamous cell. So basal cell carcinoma or squamous cell carcinoma are localized to those skin cells and that area. It's not something that can become systemic in any way. So obviously, the earlier you detect it, the less of an issue it's going to be, because what they're going to do is what's called a Mohs procedure, where they remove it and then they continue to remove surrounding tissue until we find clean edges, meaning there are no abnormal cells on any of the tissue. That's why my friend came with a big hole in his nose, because this little spot needed a whole bunch of skin to be removed before they got clean edges. So very common, and those types of skin cancer are going to show up on areas of your body that are exposed to the sun. And that's why I figured this mole was, probably one of those. Obviously, I'm outside, I'm in a swimsuit, I'm in clothing that maybe exposes my back a lot. And so for men or even women, your left arm that hangs out the car door, right? The sun is beating in on it. Women, our legs, because often those are very exposed. Men, the torso, because they're outside shirtless. But anything that's exposed, because it is the direct hit from the UVA and UVB rays. Then there's melanoma. So your melanin is your pigment of your skin, right? Melanin cells. So melanoma is cancer of your skin pigment cells. And this is why it can become a problem, because your skin is everywhere and your skin pigment is everywhere. It's a system versus the localized tissue of a basal cell or squamous cell. Those skin cells don't move around, right? They just stay there. So melanoma can become systemic, and you can have it show up anywhere in your body. Lots of places where the sun don't shine, you can find melanoma. Mine happened to be in a place that the sun shines on a lot. So again, which is why I really had a big disconnect with it being melanoma. So when she said it was melanoma, I was like, really? Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be? And so again, they biopsy it. And based on the depth of the tissue where they continue to find damaged skin cells, that's how it then gets classified as far as what you do next. So 0 to 2 millimeter depth, we're like, we're going to remove it. Probably don't need any other surgery because it's not deep enough to have cause problems. Then there's the 2 to 4 millimeter depth where we're going to remove it. We're going to remove some lymph nodes as well and test those lymph nodes to see if there's cancer. If there isn't, then it's not become systemic because your lymph is the drainage system, right? It filters junk and it likes to catch cancer cells because that's junk. And so if we have cancer cells in the lymph nodes, we know that it's come from whatever has drained into that. And then there's the 4 millimeter and deeper depth when you have your tissue removed. And if we're there, then we know we have some bigger issues that we're gonna have to deal with. So mine was 2.5 millimeters. So not great, not horrible. It's right in that zone, right? No symptoms. I don't feel anything, zero, nothing. And was like, how do you feel? I'm like, no, great. Like I always do. Like even when I went in to see the surgeon, he's checking my lymph nodes, he's checking everything. And he's like, yeah, I'm pretty confident we won't find any in the lymph. You're not displaying any symptoms. I'm like, great. Me too. I was pretty confident of that as well. Unfortunately, we were both wrong. So I had surgery, had the tissue removed, and it's, I mean, I have a 5-inch scar across the top of my back because they have to go deep and they have to have a radius. So it's basically like a shark bite. Now because mine wasn't super deep, and because of where it is, there's enough skin to close up the hole that they made. There are situations where they have to take so much that they have to graft your skin to be able to close it up. So this is why earlier is always better, right? So we remove that tissue, we remove some lymph, test comes back positive for cancer in the lymph nodes. Of course it does. Yay. Why wouldn't it? Thank you, universe, for giving me this opportunity to teach from experience. So I'm like, okay. And I'm not going to get into the hot mess of the communication or lack of or miscommunication that happened between the medical team because none of that was okay. Because I know about skin cancer and I know what this is and how this goes. Even though I was given a whole bunch of wrong information, I'm fine because I know how this goes. My concern is for people who don't respond the way I do to news like this. And I can see how this could really spiral somebody into a state of significant anxiety. So I'm going to put that little PSA out there for anybody who either gets a diagnosis, whether it's skin cancer or any kind of cancer or any kind of medical issue at all. Number one, take a deep breath and let's not let our imaginations go to the worst place it can possibly go because that is where it will go. If you have somebody in your life that you care about that gets this diagnosis, please do not go to the worst place that our imagination will go for their story. So let's take a deep breath and let's learn, right? And let's learn about what is it? How does this work? You know, what's next? How serious is it? So that we can all go through, in my opinion, at the degree of concern that the situation warrants. And that might be time, maybe at the end we'll talk about that or a whole other conversation about how to handle or support somebody who's gotten a yucky medical diagnosis. And I know, Sasha, you've been through this, right, with kind stuff. But we can talk about that later. So anyway, I have cancer in the lymph, and so now what? Well, it only showed in one lymph node. So based on that, the size that the depth and that it is in the lymph node, that for melanoma is classified as 3B, right? Stage 3B, right? Stage 1 is, oh, we get rid of it. There's nothing. Stage 2, we get rid of it. There's nothing in the lymph. Stage 3 is we got rid of it, but there's cancer in the lymph and now we do more. And so because of my age, 50, which is young when it comes to how many more years I have on this planet, and how much sun I will probably be exposed to over the however many decades I'm still here, And because of the 69% risk of lifetime recurrence, the next steps are highly encouraged to be immunotherapy treatment. So what that means is there's, a cocktail of immunotherapy drugs, which I go in for an infusion. It's about a 30-minute infusion. The protocol that I'm going to be starting is once every 3 weeks for 3 months, and then once every 6 weeks for 12 months. And that protocol is shown in research to bring the risk of recurrence down to 20%, which is incredibly significant. I have, I'm a little bit conflicted about doing it. I'm like, I don't want to put stuff in my body, drugs like that. And yet it feels like a really stupid decision to not do it, given how long I still have ahead of me, hopefully. So I'll be starting that treatment here shortly. And, it's an immunotherapy. So side effects could be anything. They're not hair falling out and things like that, but certainly it could be a bunch of things that I don't have time for, like muscle pain and fatigue and weakness and joint pain and nausea and diarrhea and a whacked out thyroid. And so, the potential of those side effects is not super exciting. I'm going to hope that my healthy lifestyle will for once work to my advantage instead of the healthy girl always having this garbage happen to her. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at with my journey.
So when you say a cocktail, I'm assuming it's an IV
Mhm.
and it's just a 30-minute IV, bunch of different drugs and maybe
Yeah.
vitamins or whatever that they have compiled. So this is something that is available to persons. Does insurance help you out? Is this all on you?
Yeah, so let me explain the whole reason and how the immunotherapy works. So I
Okay.
think the oncologist really explained it beautifully because I've lived in Hawaii and I've had cockroaches in my places before. So she said if you have cockroaches in your apartment, you call the exterminator and they get rid of the cockroaches. And you don't see cockroaches anymore. But you still have the exterminator come for follow-up treatments for a number of months because those cockroaches might have left things behind that could become problems. So my surgery got rid of all the big cancer. Okay. I had a PET scan not long after surgery, after the cancer was detected in the lymph. And the PET scan came back clean, which means there is no big, there are no cockroaches, visible cockroaches in my body. Okay. But that doesn't mean that there's not little stuff that is undetectable that could become big stuff. And so the immunotherapy gets rid of a significant chance of any little stuff that might be there becoming big stuff.
So it's a catch-all.
It's a catch all, right? It's a catch all, right?
Catch-all.
Which also means it catches the good stuff,
Oh,
which is why there could be a whole host of issues, right? Because your immune system literally takes care of everything.
yeah.
So the two name brands that a lot of people are probably familiar of because you probably heard commercials are Keytruda and Opdiva. My doctor has chosen Keytruda. Actually, I have an email to her asking her why, because I just learned about Opdiva and I want to know why she chose one over the other. But they work in very much the same way. And so it is an infusion, roughly 30 minutes. You get lab work a day before because they're going to be checking your lab work to see what's happening, to see if you're responding well and all of that stuff. Does insurance cover it? Yes, it does. I am self employed. So, it's still a gigantic chunk out of my bank account because that's what happens when you have self employed health insurance and you have a high deductible and a relatively high out of pocket max.
Because why wouldn't you be, right? You're doing all the things to take care of your health
Exactly.
ahead
Right.
of time. So I,
Right.
I get that.
Right. And that's kind of the running joke in my family and in my life and in my friend circle. Like for the healthy girl, I spend more money on health care than anybody I know. 100%. Anybody. It's crazy. And yet it's fine, right? It's time and money. That's what it is. It's time and money and hopefully minimal, if any, side effects and discomfort. So, yeah. So that's the one thing I do. I am going to say this because I don't know, the medical community, they can really throw some wrenches into things and they don't need to. So one of the things that the surgeon told me well, number one, I'm going to need all this other surgery. And then he called back later. He's like, oh, I just talked to the oncologist and that's not what we do. And I'm like, why would you not have talked to the oncologist first? Why are you? And clearly this is your first melanoma case, or you would have known that. So not super happy with that. But also he told me I was going to need chemotherapy. Now, I know there are lots of versions of chemotherapy. I know this. And I know not all of them are the chemotherapy that we all think of, right? When we hear the word chemotherapy. And yet, I also know that you don't do chemotherapy for skin cancer. So I'm like, what are you talking about? It's chemotherapy. So I talked to the oncologist and she was like, yeah, no. And I actually talked to him and I'm sorry he kept telling you that. Well, then I get the videos that my insurance provider sends for what to expect for your treatment. And the nurse who's going through the video says, now you might hear the words chemotherapy and immunotherapy worked interchangeably. We'll do that sometimes. Well, why? Why do you do that? They are not the same thing. So maybe my surgeon in his mind was thinking immunotherapy, but said chemotherapy. I don't know. But they are two different things. Can we please stop using two different words that mean two different things to talk about the same thing? Because that's not helpful at all.
Well, and that's scary, right? If you tell me immunotherapy, or say it again,
Immunotherapy.
Sorry,
Yeah,
guys, my nose is stuffed up.
that's
If
okay.
you say I'm thinking immune system. If
Mhm.
you say chemo, I'm thinking,
Right,
oh my gosh,
right.
can I send you
Exactly.
a meal? Do you
Right.
need me to do your laundry?
Right. Right. Exactly. And that's where I think all of us educating ourselves on these things, because either you or somebody you know is going to get a diagnosis of something at some point. So let's just educate ourselves so that maybe we don't jump to that, let me bring you a meal when why? I'm totally fine. Right. And I know everybody's coming from love and compassion and kindness. And I truly, truly believe that. But I'm me, right? Other people who don't respond and react to things the way I do, that could really change their outlook on all of this and their process through it and what that does. So I just ask everybody to approach it gently and on all sides, grace and gratitude as everybody's navigating, what might be a scary situation. I have had people tell me how I feel. You must be so scared. I'm actually not scared at all. Well, you don't need to be a tough girl, Michelle. I'm not being a tough girl. I'm just being me and I'm not scared. I don't generally get scared of things that you can take care of. So, am I annoyed? I'm annoyed. If I had to pick a word, it would be irritated and annoyed.
I was just gonna say that. I was gonna say scared, no, annoyed, yeah, kind of like the apartment situation, which someday we'll go over, right? We're
Exactly.
not in fear. I'm not scared. I'm not running from it. Am I annoyed? Absolutely.
Yeah.
This situation, annoying, a nuisance. Yeah.
Right. And yet I get it. Cancer is a very scary word. But when I got this diagnosis, I immediately thought of Rosa, right? Our friend Rosa, who, if you've listened to our podcast, and if you don't, you should go back to September of 2022. She was on there, right? That is scary. Rosa has 3 kids. Rosa is much younger than I am. Rosa had a diagnosis that was scary because it's more serious and the treatments are not as far along. Now, she did amazingly well, but her treatments were losing your hair and nausea and a complete disruption of your life. Mine is going to be a nuisance. So I also look at perspective, right? Yes, it's a big deal because it's cancer. In the grand scheme of cancer, it's not a big deal.
But here's the difference. You're educated.
That's why we do
That's
this, my friend, right? So people
yeah.
can get educated
But you
also.
have to realize if it was someone like my mother who maybe doesn't have all of the history and education like you do, the word cancer and then being told chemo, like, ah,
Absolutely. Right. Which is also why I really wish medical providers would get a little more on the same page with each other about the messaging and the verbiage and how we communicate with patients. Because there's the dermatologist, there's the surgeon, and there's the oncologist. And they don't really talk. It's crazy. Now, some probably do. I'm just speaking my experience, right? Like nobody talked to anybody. There
Yeah,
were
when you were
really
sending me the text messages, I I didn't know how to respond. So
like,
Michelle had sent me a text message that said, this person said this, and then the same person said this, and then the next person said this. And I was like, I don't know how to best support you because, like, can we get a second opinion? This isn't even my body, but these text messages are very unsettling. Does this person know what they're talking about? Like, this person said one thing and then 30 minutes later completely contradicts themselves. It makes me not want you to go there.
right. Well, and that has been addressed, and I have no qualms addressing situations like that with people, with the medical team, and, they may or may not do something about it, but they need to know. So, yeah, I think, like you said, just everybody take a pause and take a breath, and to your point, we don't all have that ability to take the pause and take the breath or have the resources or the wherewithal or whatever, right? And maybe you've had a past experience, whether it was yours or somebody that you cared about, and so you shape your perspective on this new situation based on your past experience. And that's totally normal to do. I know I work hard to not do that when I am helping support people through hard stuff because everybody's thing is different. So, just, asking somebody, wow, that sounds really scary. How are you feeling? Right. And then believe them when they tell you. Or, what are your thoughts on doing this immunotherapy? I mean, I will be honest, I am a little bit conflicted about it. I'm going to be seeing the dermatologist every 3 months and the oncologist every 3 months. In my mind, okay, we're looking at stuff, we're going to catch it all early before it becomes anything. Why do I need to do this immunotherapy? And yet, it will give me peace of mind, right? Reducing my risk down to 20%. So it's a year of bleh to hopefully have a long, long time ahead of peace of mind. Not that I'm not going to be careful, obviously. I mean, this has literally changed how I live every minute of my day. I don't go sit out on my patio when the sun is shining and eat my breakfast anymore, which honestly, that has been the hardest part for me of all of this is learning the shift of relationship with nature and sunshine. All my fondest memories are my sister and I at the beach or friends at the park or hiking, a mountain or being out on my paddleboard or sitting on my patio with my sweet kitty. And all of those things involve the sun shining on me.
Yeah.
And even though I will wear sunblock, then it's like, well, is this sunblock even working? Right? Because those things are going to play in your head. So now I have all the long sleeve UPF clothing and I got the hats and now I'm that girl that's all covered up when she's outside. And I don't like it. And number one, I don't like a lot of stuff on me. So it's that. But it also just it's not comfortable. I don't, it's just, yeah. So for me, honestly, that's the hardest part of all of this.
That's going to be my hardest part too, right? When you and I are together, what do? We're
Right.
outside.
Yep.
Like, it's our medicine. The few things that I'm taking away from this is ask questions.
Yes.
Ask all the questions. If you don't understand the answer, keep asking. Ask multiple people. Don't just hear it from one person and just accept it. The next thing is address it. If you feel like something is off, that is your intuition, follow it. Address it. I have some questions about the sun though. Why do we need to stay out of the sun? Or why do why are we doing like the long garments that are protective now? Like, what does the sun do to me? Why does it? That's the part that I don't really understand. I know that's maybe juvenile of me, but like,
It's not juvenile at all, Sasha. Not at, because
like,
we are never taught this, right?
but like, what does this beautiful sun that makes me so happy and brings me joy and makes me a better person and makes my mood better? Why do I have to stay out of the sun?
Well, let me first say you don't have to stay out of the sun. We need sunshine, right? Vitamin D is important. I will say, however, even being outside in the sun does not get your vitamin D levels up to where they need to be. But part of the reason our D levels have dropped dramatically is because more people are way more diligent about putting sunblock on when they're out in the sun. So it's always a cost benefit analysis, right? If you have skin, I don't care what color your skin is when you come out of the womb, If you have skin, you are at risk for skin cancer. Okay. That's just the way it is. If you have fair skin, fair hair, light eyes, you are at a higher risk than if you don't. So this and I want to be also very clear. This life, and I still get this from full grown adults who know better. Oh, it's cloudy out. I don't need sunblock. No, the sun is still out. The clouds are just in its way. The rays go through clouds. Okay. So it's not the sun, it's the rays of the sun, the UVA, UVB, and UVC. Those are just describing the length of the ray. Those UVA, UVB particularly, but UVC also, those rays can become damaging to our pigment. The very fact that our skin changes color, becomes tan, that tells you something's changed, right? That's actually our built-in primitive way of protecting ourselves from further damage. So, when people will say, "Oh, I just want to get a base tan before I go on my vacation," there is no such thing as a base tan. Okay. Your skin is changing color. You've caused damage to your skin. That's what that is. Now, if we've had sunburns, right, repeated sunburns, especially maybe really bad ones, if they were blistering, all of that factors into your cumulative risk. So, I mean, I think about growing up, right? And I grew up in Wisconsin. So we had like 3 months of the year to get this tan, right? And then we maybe went to Hawaii, maybe went to Florida for 10 days or 2 weeks. Like that was it. When I moved to Hawaii, however, I mean, I am outside unless I was sleeping. And was I always great about sunblock? I probably put it on once for the day. Did I reapply every 2 hours? Oh, God, no, of course not. Who has time for that?
Okay,
So,
let's stop right there. What does sunblock do then?
so there are two ways that sunblock can work. It depends on the type, but one of the ways is the chemicals will penetrate the skin, and then the rays, it will absorb the UVA and UVB rays before it gets into your skin cells. And the other is that it actually will act as a bounce back, right? It literally deflects and reflects the rays. So our traditional, like let's say copper tone, right? That is the traditional where it absorbs the UVA and UVB rays, the chemicals that are in the sunblock absorb it. The mineral-based ones like zinc, titanium, those are reflective.
So, like, that's what scares me. One of the reasons why I didn't for the longest time is why would I want to put chemicals on my skin? Like,
Yeah.
up until this last year, so now I use it's called Blue Blizzard or something like that. It's all mineral
Yeah.
based, and that's the one that I do use, but I don't understand, like, why would I want to put if skin is our largest organ, it's our most beautiful and biggest defense system that, God gave us. Why would I want to add these unnecessary chemicals that now my kidneys and my liver and all my internal organs have to digest?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that is part of the debate, right? That are these chemicals causing problems? And mm, I don't have the answers to that. 20 years ago, we didn't have mineral based, right? Or 25 years ago, maybe they were around 20. But so now we have way more availability of things that don't have that impact like those traditional sunblocks do. So yeah, I think a mineral based one is the way to go. And those have come a long way because they used to be really thick and pasty, right? It's the lifeguard with the white nose, right? That's the mineral.
Yeah.
So they've come a long way too as far as like ease of application and things like that. So, one thing that I do check is the UV index, and that is on almost every weather app. So, here's the thing I want everyone to know. Okay. It is the rays. I don't care if you can't see the sun is there. The rays go through clouds, they go through glass, they go through water, they go through white t shirts, they go through wet white t shirts. And I know someone's laughing at that right now, but I see a lot of people out on the boats at the beach with their white shirt on, and then they get in the water. And now their white shirt is wet. That has the equivalent of an SPF of 3. So that wet white t shirt is basically doing you nothing. So, the UV index gives you basically the scale of how intense the rays are. And it's based on the angle of the sun, the level of ozone in the air, the wind patterns. You can't look outside and say, oh, it's probably a 3, because I try to do that and I look and it's a 9.
I
So,
I want to interrupt you really quickly. So here in the United States, I am a huge I will always take look at the UV rays because I know that like depending on that, that's how tan I'm gonna be. I'm admitting to this all, okay? When we were in Chile in January, I did not know this. The UV, and I think I sent you a screenshot of it, Michelle. The UV was a 14. I did not know it went above a 10. But the sun there, and I remember telling my girlfriend, Stacy, when we were traveling there, I go, something's with this sun. I've never, ever, and this is the first time that I've ever used sunblock was in January. And I know, I was in Chile, 35 years old, and I felt it. And I was like, what is this? And we looked at it. It was at a 14 out of 10.
And let me just tell you, a 10 means stay out of the sun, right? And so, and a lot of this has to do with the proximity to the equator and the angle of the sun as it, as Earth rotates and all of that, right? The angle shifts. So it's different in the morning than it is later in the day. So if you look at it at 7 a.m. and it's a 2, it is not going to be a 2 at 4 p.m., right? So that one, right, low, and I think this is again where we create definitions of things. Oh, the UV index is low. Oh, that means I don't have to do anything. No, that means you do the basics. Sunblock, SPF 30, and your sun and your lip balm and your sunglasses. And then we're in that moderate. Well, that means I should probably not be in the sun at peak hours, right? Or make sure I have a hat or I seek shade. And then we have high. That means don't go outside, especially for somebody like me, right, who's already had melanoma. And so it does adjust what I do. I don't go out for that 4 o'clock walk anymore like I did before, or I'm going to be covered up and with a hat on it, right? But it is something that you want to avoid the peak hours because that is when they are the most intense and will do the most damage in the shortest amount of time.
So when you say damage, you're talking about the cells itself. They will damage
Correct.
the cells in the DNA.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What about sunbeds? This will be my last
Oh,
question.
God. It's a shame they're still around, quite honestly. So before I moved to Hawaii, I went to school in Oshkosh and I worked at a gym and they had tanning beds. And there was a gal who came multiple times a day. She got the 30-day unlimited forever. And she is the first person I thought of when I got this diagnosis. I still know her name. I thought, I wonder if so and so got skin cancer. I don't wish it on anybody, but by golly, if she didn't and I did, I'm really irritated now, right? Yeah, no, no. And I have people in my life who are older than you, Sasha, that are still going to sunbeds. I just scolded one of them a couple weeks ago because he knows about my situation. And he's like, oh, but I'm like, no, 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 no. I remember when I was your age, she's a little younger than me. I'm like, mm-mm-mm. I I don't want you coming to me 12 years from now when you're 50 being like, oh, I should have listened to you. Guess what I have? So yeah, no, please no to sunbeds.
Okay. Yeah, this has been very helpful. I didn't really understand the concept of like the sun, but now it makes sense. So, we all have DNA and you don't want to compromise your DNA or your cells. And so that's exactly what these UVA, UVB, and UVC rays are doing. They penetrate, then they cause a ruckus within those cells. And then whether or not the type of cells that they cause a ruckus to then can impact just that little area or can be more catastrophic and impact the whole system in all.
Yeah.
This is beautiful. I had no idea about the sunscreen, the different types. I just very thankful that you're being transparent about your situation. I know when you texted, you said, great. Now I get to teach from experience, but here I am saying thank you for teaching from experience. This has been just huge and educational. And I know that this is not something that a person would probably usually say to their friend, but because of our relationship, I know that I can say it is that thankfully, because of what you're going through, I'm forever going to be impacted. And now I will be using my mineral based. This last weekend, I had a 50-mile run and I can't tell you how many times I was white with my zinc on top of me. So your situation has impacted me positively.
Well, I'm proud of you for that. And I could, woulda, coulda, shoulda, everything all day long, right? Oh, I should have done this and I would have done that. I long ago embraced the idea whatever is happening is supposed to be happening. And I'm grateful as well that we caught it before it became a bigger problem. And now we just are going to take care of it. And I will teach and preach it. And I hope it does impact a lot of people. I've had many people already reach out after my Facebook post saying that they are going to that dermatology appointment that they've been putting off, or getting this spot checked out that they've been a little curious about. And so, that's what I've been doing since really started teaching. Is every experience I have in life, I want to share it, because this is life. This is what other people are going to go through as well. And, we can't fast forward and look at Sasha when she's 50 and say, oh, it's because she took it seriously that she didn't get it. You might never have gotten it anyway. I don't know that, right? Nobody does. But yeah, I hope anybody listening can, again, this happens to the health. Everybody's like, but Michelle, you're so healthy. Who cares? Skin cancer doesn't care. If you eat right and you exercise, it's got nothing to do with it. Nothing at all. Zero, none. So yeah, I'm healthy, but I'm not. I have cancer. So I'm not healthy.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do everything that I can to continue all my healthy habits. We'll just be changing when and how I experience life outside.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
crazy. I'm excited to see the journey, to learn from the journey. It's impacted me. The things that the two things besides like the sun exposure that it really was like, Sasha, be diligent on this, is ask questions and address things. One of my girlfriends, her mother died of lung cancer. And in hindsight, she's like, I didn't ask enough questions. I just assumed that the diagnosis was enough. And I didn't ask, I just accepted. And I didn't address, I just accepted. And so this is another one of those things where if you don't like the answer, keep asking.
Yeah.
But then, you have to at some point in time have acceptance, and then, pivot and change what you're doing in order to modify your lifestyle to embrace longevity. But that's what this has taught me. If you don't like something, ask. If you don't like something, address it. Say something, speak up. Who's going to be your biggest advocate? Yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And, whatever age you are, I know there's a lot of YBI that listen to this. And believe me, I was YBI, right? Young, beautiful, and invincible. My friend's mom died of melanoma. That's sad. No, that should have been like, what is that? What causes that? Right? Oh my gosh, I spent a lot of time in the sun. I might need to stop doing that so much. So I know you never could imagine that this could be you. Never crossed my mind that I would get melanoma. That never crossed my mind ever. One time in my whole life. Never. Never. Even with as much time as I spend in the sun, it still was like, oh, that won't happen to me. So yeah, let that just be one of the lessons as well. Anything else before we sign off?
That was really it. Just, thankful that you're speaking up and being an advocate for yourself, and also an advocate for others, so that other people realize like this can impact anyone, not just unhealthy potato slugs. No, man, you can be like an Olympian and still potentially get impacted by sun cancer. So
Yeah,
we got just keep talking about it.
we shall. Thank you for letting me chat with you about it too. And I'll do follow-ups once I start treatment, see how I feel, what's going on with that, what that experience is like. So if anybody's curious, we'll be doing some follow-up conversations on this as well. And in the meantime, as always, beautiful to share some time with you, my dear. And thank you everybody for listening. I hope you will take this and you will go and be a better being.
Thank you for listening to the Be a Better Being podcast. Michelle and Sasha hope that what you heard today inspires you to embrace this journey of life with an open mind, a kind heart, and a willingness to learn and evolve. If you enjoyed the content, please help spread their message by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. If you have a show topic idea or would like to be a guest, please visit betterbeings.net and fill out a contact form. Until next time, go and be a better being.